welcome to episode 14 of the No Bullshit Property Podcast, brought to you by Cert Property.
I'm Howard.
And I'm Paul.
And today we are going to be talking about construction, and a topic that, well, is a very difficult one to unpick in one episode, so I can see us coming back to talk about this further. But our guest today is our very own head of construction, Nigel Pearce.
Welcome.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Nigel has got how many years of construction experience?
Too many.
Too many. So he's perfectly placed to give the lowdown on the state of the UK construction industry today. But before he does that, what's the latest industry news, Paul?
I think the biggest thing is UK rents have risen at the fastest pace for 7 years, and that's actually since the records began in 2016. So that is a result of higher mortgage costs, landlords having to put the rents up, some landlords having to leave the market, which means there's an undersupply of stock, and then massive demand. It's obviously pushing the demand higher and higher.
Yeah, I mean, good news for landlords, less so for tenants, and against a wider backdrop, as you say, of mortgage costs increasing. And a counterpart to that piece of news is, mortgage rates are at the highest they've been since 2007. So a real squeeze on the property market, which is driving more people into rented accommodation. And I think it's a trend that we're going to see continue for a while yet.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what we're seeing in our own portfolio stock. You know, every property that comes to market is getting into a bidding war and pushing the rents higher and higher because there's so many people for every property that becomes available. Yeah. And it's quite unlike anything I've seen before, really, in my vast years.
Your many years of experience as well. Yeah.
Although I don't look it.
Trying to say Nigel does.
I'm going to leave shortly.
Our quickest guest appearance. But I think the interesting dynamic will be to see how it plays out beyond the traditional or typical rental markets like Manchester City Centre and other major city centres across the UK, and whether we will now see more of a structural shift in rental versus home ownership. Suburban build-to-rent has been the highest growth sector in the residential investment market over the last 12 months. It's going to be interesting to see whether that is something that sticks around, and whether people are happy to go from living in rental property in an urban location to a suburban one as well. I mean, big investment firms and pension funds are, obviously placing their bets that they will be, and it is a structural change. Be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Certainly will.
So, Nigel, how are we going to fix this supply-demand imbalance? How are we going to fix this increase in rents and make property more affordable? How are we going to be building these properties to satisfy this demand?
Simple answer is I don't know. We've had so many changes in the legislation recently with regards to fire, upgrading building regs, the Part L changes for legislation. Let's get down to zero carbon. We've had so many changes with regards to how we're going to place embodied carbon in the construction techniques, and how much energy usage that the buildings are going to make. That question is it's how long's a piece of string.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's a challenge. We're talking there about challenges in terms of mortgage rates and finance costs, and those are challenges that almost everyone in the country's aware of or been impacted by, general cost of living. But alongside that, big challenge that we've faced over the last few years is unrelenting rises in construction costs, and it is a it's a challenge that even without the things you just mentioned there, changing legislation to make buildings more energy efficient and to obviously make them safer as well, an important goal. But just without that, construction costs have been rising and have been a challenge to make new build projects deliverable. So, yeah, I mean, what's your perspective on things? Where do we go? What do we do?
What do we do, or why are they increasing? I mean, if we go back to why have they increased? The inflationary prices, realistically, they've been moving ever since the dreaded Brexit. We started with Brexit. I don't think we really considered what those changes were going to be. We all thought we were going to pay a little bit more for materials being imported into the UK and everything else. But on the back of Brexit, before we'd actually worked out what was going to happen, we had COVID. After COVID, we've had a war in Ukraine. But during COVID, because there was a break in construction, a lot of people went out of the industry. We already had a shortage of labour. And then suddenly we've got a shortage of labour and materials, which is pushing inflation. You've got people trying to catch up at that point. Then straight after that, we have a war that pushes up the cost of fuel and everything else, and all the consumables that everybody else has experienced, which is done exactly the same for construction. So, and then just before all of that, we had a change in the legislation with regards to fire. So we've got a change in the products and what is classed as a combustible product that is allowable within a high-rise building and what's not allowable in a high-rise building. That changed. So there's been a mirage of changes that contractors and subcontractors have been having to absorb over that 5-year period, and not all of them have had to be passed on to clients, developers, stakeholders per se, because of the way that a D&B job is. It's down to the delivery of those individuals. I think everybody walked into those contracts willingly, openly. That's how a D&B contract was. But I think with the culmination of all of those things that I've just mentioned over a 5-year period, there's been no get out of jail free card for anybody that's been caught in that trap. And we've just been witnessing for the last 3 years, and probably witness for another year, contractor after contractor, subcontractor after subcontractor, developer after developer, falling on their sword, not being able to fulfil the commitments that they've made during that period, and having no avenue to be able to sustain themselves to deliver the promises that they'd embarked upon. That's an industry-wide problem. It's not one that we've experienced. I mean, I'm happy to say that as CERT, we're a growing business. I joined this business over a year ago, and it's been growing right the way through that bad period. It's selected good contractors, good designers, good specialists around us, and all our deliverables have been met, and that's key. And I think we've learned from a very early stage that it's paramount to engage with subcontractors, main contractors and consultants alike right from inception, so that we don't waste our time. So we don't create a deliverable that gets all the way down to let's say going from the feasibility study through to the inception of construction before realising that we're beyond our budget. We can't deliver on that for one reason or another. So I think with our expertise within the business, having architects here, having somebody like myself that's construction minded, that understands the industry, we can look out and look into the industry and allow them to partner with us very early, and make sure that we get things right first time. Whereas I'm afraid to say that wasn't the route that many people have taken, and that's culminated in a lot of failing businesses recently.
I think the thing that shocked me when I first got into development was how construction works. And you mentioned there a lot of contractors walked into D&B jobs, and just clarifying what that is, that's a design and build contract where effectively the contractor looks at your plans, your proposals, gives you a cost, and takes on the risk as to whether they can build it for that cost. In simple terms,
No,
right.
you're correct. I think the key there is about the risk.
Yeah.
For our stakeholders, for our investors, as we go through this process, the key thing on the deliverable for all of those involved is obviously the margin, and making sure that the risk has been taken away from them and comfortably placed somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that has been the case for 20, 30, 50 years. Mm-hmm. That's not been a problem, and main contractors and contract developers are quite used to taking on board risk. I think the problem that's happened over the last 5 years with the culminating of the events that have occurred that have created the inflationary pressures is because those contracts didn't have flexible clauses with regards to inflation and other bits and pieces. They've been stuck. Principally they've been stuck on prices that are 30% less than what they're actually having to deliver for, with margins that are, at a squeeze, they're around the 5-6% mark. So they have no wriggle room, and they're losing one job after another. They're losing money, and that's been a big problem. As clients, stakeholders, investors, funds, everybody's been happy that we've de-risked it for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. I think we've been very slow to react when we realised that one of our partners within the construction industry, the key deliverables, have burdened all of that risk to the point where we've kind of unduly sat back and allowed them to fall on their swords and to keel over, as opposed to go, actually, this is our problem, not their problem. And we were too slow to go, hold on a minute, we need to put our arm around them, we need to invest back into them, we need to make sure that they can deliver and understand the problems and come up with a solution that would allow the schemes to finish. There's too many schemes now that have got halfway through, they've stalled. The administrators have taken hold of them, but they haven't mothballed them. They've got damage because of the weather and the fact that they've been sat there, or somebody's not been paid, so we haven't got a clear line to a warranty or a statement. And effectively, we've got developments now that actually don't have any valued asset on them. They actually have a hindrance on them because we're unable to warrant the materials that have already been installed, or they've become in such a they've turned themselves into such a disaster as they've been there for too long that they need to come down again. So in fact, we end up with sites that actually don't have an asset. That we're realising actually, well, no, there's another bill here to clear the site to start again. And it's happened too frequently, and I think we have sat back a little bit too long as an industry, not this business, but as an industry. And I'm fairly happy, if I should say, that I've jumped from a contractor's background to a developer such as CERT in this period. My eyes have been opened substantially with regards to how we can manage that process. But whereas I think contractors are a little bit blinkered in thinking that a client doesn't want to help them. Clients do. And we do recognise, we certainly do now, that it's not a problem of their own, and for the greater good of the project and for the greater good of all businesses involved, we need to be talking and being a lot more harmonious with one another as an industry. Yeah,
and that's the bit that surprised me when, like I say, first getting into development, seeing like two opposing parties sat the other side of a contract, and it was almost like a line in the sand was drawn. Like, contractor gave the price and the developer kind of went, thanks for that, you crack on and build it, don't care about anything behind the price that you've given, just make sure you get to the end of it. And there hasn't been over the years that collaborative approach, and it has been like two sides of a fence. And yeah, maybe because it was a rising market, it was easy for a developer to just go, I don't care what's behind the curtain, just crack on, guys, as long as your price works. But the events of the last few years have change that perspective. Certainly, we see it now with funders who are asking a lot more questions of not just the contractor but the subcontractors, and who are they? How much of the subcontract packages have you got secured? And yeah, we were saying at the start here about a sort of shift in dynamic in housing and rentals. Maybe this is the start of a shift in dynamic of how developers, funders and contractors approach a contract, because everyone needs to work together on it.
It has to be. I mean, we can't have that line in the sand. We can't have the fence where we de-risk it, it's over to you, it's your problem, and then watch somebody fail. It's been very rare in the past that that's happened. When it if a contractor fails on a scheme, which it does happen, from a contracting background, you're doing 20 schemes at a time. If you fail on a scheme, that's it. Out of 20, it's a scheme. You have another 19 to prop it up. But here, because of the situation that has occurred, we are witnessing contractors that are failing on 80% or if not all of their stock. And that's been the big problem.
And what do you think those contracts need to look like going forward?
I don't think that the project needs to spectacularly change. A D&B contract is it's quite a fair contract. Yeah. We say unamended, which they always get amended, but it's understanding and talking between the group. I've been, I'm lucky to work with Cert and yourself buying into our ethos and philosophy that is a continuation of what you already had, but it's making sure that we partner with these people. It's not a them and us. It's a partnership. The deliverables and the goals is all bespoke to each individual site. Every site is different, has a different need, has a different concept, has a different deliverable. And as a business, we've got so many facets here, right from the acquisition and the inception, right the way through to managing that product 10, 20 years after it's been built, and everything in between. So we're not a developer that just runs away at PC. We are a developer that takes hold of the stock. That more than me, Paul. Takes hold of the stock and continues to manage that stock. So having an influence from your department coming back through on the inception, make sure that what we actually finish on site at PC meets everybody's goal. And that's something that doesn't sound very spectacularly new.
But not everybody does it well.
Not everybody does it well. But on top of that, the budgets... an inception budget and a construction budget rarely gets to the maintenance and the repair budget. So you end up building as cheap as you can. I shouldn't use that word, but with the most economic build process that you can, and then allow somebody else's budget to worry about its ongoing maintenance. Now here, we've got one mind on the ongoing maintenance as well. So we're not looking at the most economical building sometimes. We might have to add value to that, to make sure that the long-term benefit of that scheme, that whole holistic approach, is undertaken.
No corners on my watch.
Absolutely. But this is something that was recognised 20, 25 years ago, but it's still not standard today.
So you said earlier about, obviously there's been an exit of a lot of contractors into the market, and I know we've spoken internally about why you'd want to be a contractor in this current climate. What are we going to do to get people back into that profession, because we need to build homes?
Well, there's the $1 million question. I mean, we've had people for the last 30 years running away from construction. Let's be honest about it. In the UK, it's not a sexy industry. Who wants to be a plumber or an electrician? Even an architect or a quantity surveyor, dare I say it, as I am. It's not a sexy industry. I'm growing up at the back end of that industry, so to speak, as far as education is concerned. Because even when I was going, people had one eye, if not both eyes, on media, leisure, tech, That's the place that people want to be. They all want to be gamers. They all want to be on FIFA. They all want to do the next job, whatever it may be. That's where the kids are. That's where my kids are now. That's where they live. They can run around a computer at the age of 10 and do far more on that than you or I could ever contemplate that computer could do. And that's great. But we don't have anybody that wants to come in and put pipes and wires and bricks and mortar and everything else and do the ugly things. There are people that come through, don't get me wrong, but not in the vast quantities that we need. So that's why we have to change the way that we build. Some of the stuff is all about innovation. Modern methods of construction. Modular build. SIPS panels, off-site constructions. Do we build a facade with a robot? So we've got computers generating 3D printers using concrete in this day and age as well, on a global scale. These are all things to bypass the fact that we haven't got the supply chain there to actually undertake the work. But then we have another problem on top of that, which is obviously we have to adhere to legislation problems with building regs and everything else. And then we have a further layer on top of that, which is down to your mortgage lenders and your insurers and warranty providers and everybody else who might not necessarily be happy with those products for one reason or another, because they're not tried and tested. I want to see it on a scheme. So now somebody's got to go in there and put it on a scheme and leave it there for 10 years before an insurer will come in and sign it off, unless they're investing in that business themselves, and then they might sign it off tomorrow. I don't know. But we're in that industry now where, innovation is great and we embrace it, but we are struggling to put things in place that that are sustainable. A PV panel that I put on a roof today is not even recognisable versus the PV panel we were putting on houses 20 years ago. We used to kid over the last 10-15 years that every panel we put on a building was 10 times better than the one previous. It was like, which one do I get? Those that have invested in it, is you must invest in something. That's great, and I totally get that, but tomorrow there's always going to be a better product, and it's when do you put that foot on that ladder. Now, as a business, we want to be carbon neutral. We want to be ahead of what the government is telling us, but we're listening to our clients. As I understand it, our clients' feedback say we want to be in a sustainable home. We want to have something that that's low carbon, that reduces on the energy and everything else, and they see value in it and they're willing to pay more for it. The problem is we haven't got a grade, as I see. We've got EPC calculations and bits and pieces, but we haven't got something where we can go, it's category this or category that. Category 1 or a category A, and this is what you're buying into. If I bought a fridge freezer, I know that if I get an A rated or or a triple A rated or a B rated, I know what I'm going to get for my money, and I'm willing to pay a little bit extra for the better products. I don't think we quite have that within our industry at this moment in time, and we need it. And we probably need it for houses as well as we need it for commercial properties, and then and then some commercial properties would have to change to sheds. So we have different facets of construction techniques that we build, and we might have to have various categories for it. But we need those categories to be able to say we're at this, and therefore it has a value of X. And that's the bit that we're striving for. I think as in construction, we can keep building things and we can keep getting better, but no one's given us that tick in the box to say, we've achieved that category, and that build there is going to save you £10,000 a year, and therefore it's worth that little bit more to buy.
And you think in turn that'll attract people back to the industry because there's a sense of quality? I
think that those facets, attracting people back into the industry, those facets, you've got people with the expertise around them. I think Brexit's hurt us for our industry. Let's be honest about it. We had a lot of labour from Europe, and the flexibility for us, even myself wanting to work in Europe and then work back here again and so on. That flow and that transition that was so easy before isn't there. And it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise anyone listening to this that we're all voting to go back into Brexit. Back into Europe, in 5 years' time. It just wouldn't surprise you. It's just for the right reasons. I don't know what will make people want to be in construction.
Higher salaries.
Yeah.
If there's a shortage, and we're seeing it, if there's a shortage of the labour that's needed, then what's going to happen? Salaries go up, and does it get to that point where they've gone up enough that even though it's not necessarily a sexy industry to get into, you look at it and go, well, actually, going into that, I can earn more than going into something sexier and higher risk.
But we're already at that level. I think we're already trying to entice people into the business by increasing salaries. Manchester's hourly rate is not that much different to a London hourly rate for tradesmen.
Right.
And believe it or not, I think I read something today on Construction Inquirer that was telling me that the Leeds hourly rate is even higher is even closer to London than ours.
Right.
So it's all down to where the workforce is and who wants them. We've all heard of stories that a bricklayer wants an extra 50p, he'll jump to the next site. I mean, that is the reality. It's a very dog eat dog world here in construction, and they are in. Every tradesman is in great demand, and it's down to the contractual relationships that the contractors have on the delivery, and they have a look at the blueprint on the contract, and they go, "Oh, I'm going to lose £30,000 a week if I don't finish this on time. I'll tell you what, I'll pay you an extra £1. You come and work for me rather than go and work for him." And that's what's happening. We have the same subcontractors in Manchester and in Leeds, dare I say, and in Liverpool, dare I say, as everybody else. The subcontractors are quite finite. We have this pool of labour and resource and subcontractors, and we all use the same ones. Let's not kid ourselves that if we go to a contractor, he has his own pool of labour and resource. It's exactly the same one as the next. It's how he manages them, and how he communicates with them. Is he working so closely with them that they'll do nothing other than his work? I doubt it. But what they will do is, if they're treated fairly, they'll come back and work for him. And that's got to work across the industry. Subcontractors need to be treated fairly by main contractors. Us as developers need to treat main contractors fairly so that they're able to treat their supply chain and so on and so forth. So it all cascades through that if everybody's fair with one another and not adversarial to one another, then jobs will get delivered quicker, faster, that means within budget, with the right quality.
So we all just need to show each other a bit more love. Stop blaming the contractors for being late, and you make it sexy again.
We'll try and do that. We should get you in my department. You can make it sexy.
I mean, the shortage of labour thing, I think, isn't going to go away for a while either. Even if it does become sexy, there's still a massive shortage, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. The way forward is innovation, but the roadblock to that is the innovation bumping up against the controls that we rightfully have, because we're building buildings and we want them to stay standing upright, and we want them to be safe. So we've got innovation trying to push us forwards, but we are still hitting these hurdles with legislation and adaptation of these innovative routes forward taking a bit of time. So I guess it's something that's a work in progress. It's just going to take that time, like you say, for people to test these new methods, and then they get adopted. But is there quick fixes? Is there short-term solutions?
There's always a short-term solution, but the quick fix is the industry needs to change its all our peers within this industry really need to understand what they're trying to deliver. We can change our building regs. I'm happy that the government have got building regs. We should have a standard, a minimum standard. Let's be honest about it. It's a minimum standard that we should all abide by. There's nothing stopping us going above that. So, and there's certainly nothing within CERT stopping us from going above that where we see the value. And it's who's influencing that. Is it being influenced by our peers in construction and contractors that understand the innovation, or is it being influenced by by financial institutions who are worried about liabilities and insurances and other bits and pieces. And my fear is it's the latter. Government only seems to listen to the latter. Shouldn't say that. That's my opinion, obviously, not Cert's. But in reality, I see it as, more of our peers need to be spoken to with regards to making it a fairer environment for everyone, and not allowing somebody that is interested in the end product to determine how that construction of or the construction of that product should look. It should be about the people that understand how it's been put together. Nobody builds something wrong knowingly. Nobody tries to go to work. I'm a firm believer of this. No one turns up, gets out of bed and goes to work thinking, I'm going to have a bad day and I want to do a bad job. Everyone's going to turn up wanting to do what's, their best at any business that they work for. So I'm a firm believer in that. I don't think there's too many people that realistically go to work to do harm. So we just need our peers around us to probably be lent upon better and courted better to make sure that the legislation that's put in place and the safety nets that are put in place are probably more fit for purpose, dare I say.
Better informed, maybe.
Nobody likes fit for purpose. But better informed, definitely. Yes, I agree.
Good.
Well, lots of food for thought.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it is a really interesting dynamic. There's so many, and we're scratching the surface as we have with a few topics on here, but there's so many dynamics at play that all come together that make construction so complex. And actually the route forward is relatively simple when you look at it. It is innovation. It is changing how we do things that have been done the same way for 100 years plus, generally speaking. A house has been built largely the same way for 100 years, and it's how do we get to the point where we can change that holistically, and take pressure off the labour market, utilise technology, utilise materials as well. I mean, that's something you touched on earlier about material costs increasing and importing materials, but we've got a myriad of waste materials that actually could be reutilised, but we don't because we can't. So it's really interesting to try and sort of second guess what happens next and what bits do give. What do you see as the future then? What's your perception?
I think the future is we're going to plod on as we are for a little while, unfortunately, Howard.
Yeah.
I think Cert's approach of collaborative working, listening to all of these things, we've spoken to our supply chain, and it's interesting to hear things such as materials, packaging on materials, getting away from the amount of waste that is generated on a construction site by actually engaging in the supply chain and the suppliers earlier to get bespoke packagings for sites as opposed to just generic packagings for site, so that you can do away with we had one site where they've done away with 50 skips just on an electrical package. So we need to talk to one another and understand where these economies of scale can help us. They save us time, they save us costs, they save the environment. We don't like to tip anything. Material sizes seem to be glossed over and have been glossed over for a long time. Modern methods of construction are kind of bringing this more focused into panel sizes and panelization. But how many times do we see a scheme that we'll have a 3 meter floor to soffit, and then we've got a board that's at 2.7 or a 2.4. So we're generating a cut every time. So we're creating waste. Why can't it be a 3 meter board? And it goes in there. Because it's difficult to get in because it's too wide. So we have to reduce the width. We're not thinking smartly enough on many occasions to be able to get the economies into the new builds that we all know are there, and we do scratch the surface. And I think every scheme gets better You know, if we built Insignia, for example, if we built it again, and then again, and then again, and then again, each time it will get better. But the problem is we reinvent the wheel. You know, we don't have another Insignia, or it's going to be another this, or it's going to be another that, and each one is bespoke, and we love that. But we have to get some economies in there. You know, some things will be the same. You know, whether it's a brand standard for a kitchen, whether it's just the petition build up for the internal linings, whether or not we've got something that's bespoke that we like with regards to an external facade. Each of those learnings need to be shared, and we don't even do that as an industry. We do not do that. You know, so I couldn't go and find you an architect's detail from a building that was built last week and be able to use it if it wasn't something I've paid for. Now, I totally get that, because we're back down to the insurance and the warranty of what it was there for, etc. And also, you know, you've got somebody that's been paid for the time to do that design in the first instance. But maybe we should have a big Barber index of design that is sat there, that is shared, that we all pay for, you know, as a collaborative, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, that we don't get to a stumbling block where we've got a joint detail with a mirage of materials, that we're all scratching our head to say who's is the best methodology to fix this, when we can actually go to an encyclopedia and go, well, they tried that and this is the feedback, and they tried this and that's the feedback, and actually this one seems to work. Let's run with that. Whether there's a fee to pay, or whether it's you know, to use the detail, or there's a fee to pay to have the detail on a system, it would be nice to share that information. But how much information in construction is lost? You know, from one side
great
to the
ideas
next.
as well.
Great ideas lost from 1 week to the next. I mean, we're still arguing about whether or not we can build a pyramid, aren't we? So, you know, we've lost all of, you know, we all think we know how the pyramids were built. We all think we know that how these great temples were built and everything else in history, but we don't really know. And if we give it a go, actually, we start scratching our head, even with a JCB and a big crane, as to whether or not we could achieve it, let alone not having those at our fingertips at the time. So we lose all of that learning, and we are now in a position where with the internet, we should be sharing this knowledge. We should be able to put it into a location and keep hold of it.
There we go. That could be our quick fix.
That could be the quick fix.
Doesn't sound too quick, but quickish.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, really insightful. Yeah, definitely that. Definitely. Like I say, it's a multifaceted topic, so I can imagine we'll be talking again about it in the near future. So thank you for your insight, Nigel.
Thank you for listening. I'm pleased you there, Paul, stayed awake for most of it.
So thank you for tuning into this episode of the No Bullshit Property Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please let us know on Instagram. Our handle is @cert_property. Send us a message, like our content and follow us. You can also subscribe on all the podcast channels. But you'll also find the latest UK property news, downloadable industry guides and much more to help you on your investment journey on certproperty.co.uk, of course.
Of course.
Until next time.